Alan Greenspan, born in New York City in 1926. He told Jim Lehrer in 2007 that he was a whiz with numbers from the beginning.
The math was a big deal when I was very young, and my mother used to parade me out. She would have me add 45 and 162 in my head, and I'm a kid. And
you were just being kind of there as show-off for
show
it,
off.
Right?
I was a prop for parties.
Yeah.
But Greenspan's first career was in music, studying at Juilliard and playing jazz professionally. It wasn't long, though, before he gave up gig work to go back to numbers.
The best economic decision I ever made in my life was to decide to leave the music business and go into economics.
Young economist Greenspan was soon drawn to Ayn Rand, fierce opponent of government regulation.
Each man must live as an end in himself and follow his own rational self-interest.
The author of The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged became Greenspan's mentor.
He was almost a quasi-son, I would say.
Sebastian Mallaby wrote a biography of Greenspan, The Man Who Knew.
His roots were in the extreme sort of libertarian anti-government circles. And it's remarkable, therefore, that he spent most of his career very successfully in power, in politics, in Washington, and doing all the things that a libertarian might abhor.
Greenspan got into politics as an advisor to the 1968 Richard Nixon campaign, chaired the Council of Economic Advisors under President Ford, was a member of President Ronald Reagan's Economic Policy Board.
I, Alan Greenspan.
And in 1987, he became chairman of the Federal Reserve.
Chairman Greenspan will bring all his skill to bear upon the task of promoting our continued economic growth while keeping inflation low.
He went on to serve 5 terms under 4 different presidents, trusted by Republicans and Democrats alike.
He just had this ability to go into a room in a one-on-one meeting, spout a bunch of very obscure data, and make the other person feel that the only way they could understand this stuff is they asked for his advice.
I'm trying to punch it up.
Just 2 months after he became Fed chair, the stock market crashed by over 22% in one day, October 19th, 1987.
And he issued a statement saying that the Fed would do what it took, effectively, to stabilize the markets. And that was enough to get the markets to bounce back.
Whenever the stock market threatened to plunge again, says Mallaby,
Greenspan seemed to pop up, say something which stabilized everybody's nerves, offer maybe to cut interest rates, and then that would make the markets go up again.
Greenspan was credited with steering the Fed through 2 recessions. For stabilizing global markets in the late 90s, he was lionized and praised for intervening again after September 11th. And in fact, Greenspan's reign coincided with the longest economic expansion in U.S. history, prompting the title maestro of the U.S. economy.
He really was, in a way that I think is hard to imagine today, a sort of technocrat hero.
In one widely noted speech, Greenspan worried openly about the stock market overheating.
How do we know when irrational exuberance has unduly escalated asset values, which then become subject to unexpected and prolonged contractions?
But more typically, he kept markets up, though using opaque language to explain himself, especially when asked a question he didn't want to answer.
And so he would let his sentence sort of go around with multiple subclauses, and it would just be incomprehensible. It was a tactic, and a very successful one.
No wonder his testimony before Congress could be hard to follow.
We at the Federal Reserve, recognizing the powerful forces of productivity growth and global restraint on inflation, have not perceived to date the need to tighten policy in response to strong demand beyond what has occurred through falling inflation's upward pressure on the real federal funds rate and the modest increase in the nominal rate.
As Greenspan later told Jim Lehrer,
one of the problems that surprised me when I got into public life was that open, clear talk often creates problems.
In 2007, there were serious worries about a financial bubble. Greenspan's response?
When you get bubbles like this, there is no way of diffusing them until the speculative fever breaks on its own.
Soon after came the 2008 financial collapse, and Greenspan's reputation quickly reversed. He was widely criticized for having allowed the housing bubble.
Financial bubbles are super disruptive, and to ignore them is a big mistake. And Greenspan made that mistake, and that is where I fault him.
But when he appeared before a House committee in 2008, Greenspan sort of admitted that he'd put too much trust in markets to self-correct.
Those of us who have looked to the self-interest of lending institutions to protect shareholders' equity, myself especially, are in a state of shocked disbelief.
For much of his tenure, Greenspan presided over a rapidly changing economy, one transformed by technology and globalization, but it was all part of a business he never tired of.
I've been an economist since the latter part of the 1940s, and that's my profession. I love it.
Alan Greenspan is survived by his wife of 29 years, journalist Andrea Mitchell. For the PBS News Hour, Paul Solman.
Support journalism you trust. Support PBS News. Donate now, or even better, start a monthly contribution today.